I've seen comments on our kind of scattered work session, business meeting kinds of things, and we apologize. There are maybe some extenuating circumstances this year that kind of led to some of this. That tonight is one of those things, and the fact that we're also shortchanged the work session in December. So in some of these things, we've felt like we maybe owed a response to some of these folks to move them forward. So it is material. So we've heard you, and we'll try to do that as best we can. Let's go through this subdivision plat. Can we do that too? No.
On that, I'm not opposed to having a work session after a light business meeting. I just really don't like having a work session, then voting and splitting those meetings.
Yeah,
we have extra time, let's utilize it. I'm for that.
We agree, but what I'm asking for is a little understanding that we're trying to, when we had to, you really ought to be on stage tonight, I really appreciate you coming and being here. But with bound by the statute that we have to replace Andrea, we had to come up with a big block of time. So let's go ahead. We've heard you, so we'll do our best to manage it.
Intergate North 3. This subdivision is located just to the northwest of the Syracuse Arts Academy Elementary School, their satellite, off of 193. Trying to get to through here. Lot subdivision. Lot number 1 is meant to be for Ruston Mortuary. The mortuary has submitted a site plan. They've been through Planning Commission. Site plans are not reviewed by City Council, but as an update, the building has gone through their architectural review committee and the site planning process. It's looking good. It meets our ordinance. We're excited to have business. And then lot 2, they don't know what they're going to do, but it'll be another future business. And with the subdivision, they'll be building a creation of the road jutting out to the west of 300 South.
Okay, so how does that work? You're asking us to approve lot 2, but we don't know what's going to be on it.
Yeah, so there's a subdivision. It's not a site plan. It doesn't have anything. A subdivision isn't anything to do with the specific business. They're literally taking the land and dividing it.
So my question is when that happens, because if they're entitled to the second lot without telling us what the plan is for that, I don't think that's okay. But if they come back to us and get approval on the second lot, I mean, the fact that it exists, no problem.
Yeah.
But approval for what you put there, I can't write a blank check.
Yes. So when they need to build something, then
They will have to
come
have
back
approval again.
and bring a site plan application that we'll review up and down.
And that's not entitled until they reveal that.
So within the zone for a business park, if you read through, there's a list of permitted uses.
Right.
So they're without any. When we did the rezone, we essentially.
But they are anyway if we rezone it.
Yeah, we essentially remember we rezoned it, so we said, okay, these are the uses that of the zone that we're okay with on the site. And so if they actually want to develop it, they still need to give us their plans and their site plans so that we'll review it.
And as long as it's within that, then so we're not beholden to something that's outside of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if they come in with something that's not on the list of permitted uses within the business park zone, then they would have to do a different zone.
Aren't they just dividing the lot because it's too large for the mortuary?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just make
And
sure.
they're just building a road down the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
building a road.
And
It'll be essentially the same situation we have right there across the street with those 3 undeveloped lots
The applicant is here as well too. if you
next
have
to
some specific
next to
questions.
Jared's Auto. Except those I think are zone commercial, so they can only do what's allowed in commercial.
Yeah, you can see that it'll be limited. You can see the lot number technically they're building on lot number 2 first. That road will stub to the west in anticipation of future development, and there'll be a temporary fire turnaround through there. And if you remember, I don't want to get
Can you
sidetracked.
remind us what's allowed in business?
Yeah, they put the,
It's in the packet.
I know, but I
sorry,
can't find it at the moment.
it's all right. I'll pull it up.
And I wanted to read it again because
So-
it wasn't clear.
So yeah, we've already approved this zone.
That's for the.
This is the page. You can see it.
Open
There it
Adobe,
is.
you get a table of contents. It's pretty slick.
What was that?
If you open them in Adobe, you can actually access the table of contents and
In
go
the
straight to it.
box.
It has a
Nice.
menu.
Versus Dropbox.
Yeah,
A little clunky.
That's a good hint.
Good tip. Permitted uses, business services and professional offices, churches, data centers, financial institutions, hotels, printing industries, public offices, public parks, research services, restaurants, schools. Uses considered similar by the land use administrator. And then there's a list of conditional uses.
Hate that last one.
So and then playing off of kind of those uses deemed compatible, it needs to be consistent with this first paragraph of the purpose. The purpose of the zone is to provide areas primarily for planned general office and business park developments, and related services that will be compatible with, enhance value of, and provide a transition to nearby residential areas, and will promote a quiet, clean environment. Development in this zone should emphasize a high-low architectural and landscape excellence. These zone districts will generally be established along high-volume arterial streets, like 193, in order to buffer the impacts of these streets from less intensive land uses. The intent is to create an attractive environment that will complement and serve as a transition to surrounding land uses. So the mortuary, that meets, that. So as far as the actual subdivision, I think it's pretty straightforward. They've worked out some engineering issues. There will be some future development to the south, but that's not what we're really evaluating at this time. The utilities are in the road. They will have, one thing that's unique is they will have the stormwater draining off kind of on the west edge of the property. That is kind of a temporary solution until they figure out what's going to happen in the south. Remember, that was something we've talked about in the past, of how the utilities will work. But they've worked it out. It meets our ordinance. Staff recommends approval of the subdivision.
So just out of curiosity, which one of these permitted uses does the mortuary fall under?
If you go down to the conditional ones, it's under there.
It's a condition.
It's
Okay,
a conditional one.
so we don't put it under,
It's right there.
but I was just wondering if we put it under A or even B, churches, on the upper part.
Wouldn't call it
That's
mortuary
why it
church,
kinda
but I
is
can see where you
quasi-
might.
It's under H.
Yeah. It's a quasi situation.
All right.
Funeral home, E. It specifically says. Funeral home.
I think it's a great addition to.
We need something like this.
And it makes sense to subdivide the lot so that we can get more use out of the other portion.
We hope that someday that 300 south will just keep going to the west. Next to our Costco.
Any other questions, council?
No.
Okay. We've been in contact with Bob Stevenson. He's all the way to RC Willie, so he's on his way. Maybe I could give you a little background on this and then have Brody give you a little background on the letter they're requesting. Back in, I'm guessing it was probably either May or June of this year at a COG meeting that I attended. The question of the third quarter sales tax initiative was brought up. For the benefit of those maybe who are not familiar with what we're talking about, the state legislature gave counties, particularly counties, first and the fourth of this county, and there's now
Second.
the
The
second.
first, second, and fourth are all.
And the fourth are all in place. The one that's in question now is the third quarter sales tax, and Andrew Gruber from Wasatch Front Regional Council. By the way, does everybody know what Wasatch Front Regional Council is? it's a metropolitan planning organization, and federal dollars and state dollars have to be funneled through an organization to us. They aren't just handed out to us, and Wasatch Front Regional Council serves that purpose for us. And Andrew and Bob Stevenson are visiting with the cities in the county to get a feel from each of the city councils about how we feel about the third quarter sales tax. They're asking for support in way of a resolution and a letter indicating that we would be supportive of that. So we've asked them to come and talk to us about it. Do you want to start, Andrew, without Bob? Because Bob's on his way. He's just behind.
Whatever works for you. I'm happy to wait for Mayor Stevenson, or if it works better for you, for me to start, whatever your preference. I'm happy to wait for him, though.
Do you want to talk about the letter?
Sure.
Can you talk about the letter?
Sure. So tonight on the agenda, you'll see this is up for a vote. It's the authorization to allow Mayor Gailey to sign the letter that's attached in the packet. The basis, the letter describes a little bit of the basis of the tax. So in providing dollars for road maintenance and road acquisition and road enhancements, there's really three primary revenue sources, right? There's impact fees, which can only be used for capacity enhancements. There's the gas tax, which we use for maintenance. And then there's sales tax, optional sales taxes, which Mayor Gailey just described. And the reason sales tax is one of the options, there is a rational nexus between purchasing and travel. Most brick and mortar retail, which still today, believe it or not, most retail is done at brick and mortar stores. And it requires a lot of people to travel in one form or another on roads to get there and to get to and from. But even online purchases that are now subject to sales tax, they typically require delivery on city roads. And so the reason sales tax is considered here. In addition to that, because of technology across the country, and Utah's no exception, the ability to acquire tax revenue, it has leveled off because of better gas mileage, alternative fuel vehicles, which aren't taxed the same way. And so it's getting harder to maintain the ability to maintain roads. So this tax, as it's adopted today, and I hope I'm not getting too much into that, it can't be used for routine maintenance and reconstruction. It's for capacity and land acquisition only. And that's something that I think that Andrew can talk to. So this letter, what it does, it says, in essence, that the Syracuse City supports the Davis County Commissioner's action of adopting the quarter-cent sales tax. The reason it's on for tonight is because of a timeline of which there is movement outside of the city and within the city to get an answer from all Davis County municipalities of whether they do support it or not. So this is sort of an opportunity to formally say, yes, we're in support, or no, we're not in support of, or we are only in support of if X, Y, and Z happen. So that's kind of the decision that'll be later tonight. So with that.
Who's the spokesman? Andrew or Bob?
You know, I always defer to the final elected officials.
Okay.
I'm happy to do whatever both of the mayors and the council would like.
Bob, you want to help us?
Andrew and I have gone around and talked to a few meetings on that. Andrew, I think, said a couple on his own also, as we talk a little bit about this. From my perspective on this is very important to us as far as the county goes. When I refer to county, I refer to the cities. Realistically, we're now a very urban county, and made up of the cities is what Davis County is 15 cities. From my perspective, there could be some legislative, and I think Andrew can talk a little bit about that in a second, some legislative action that could take place during the session that may change this up a little bit to where maybe it's a little more flexible, but we don't know that going into it. And from my perspective is that this needs to be put in place, and if everything goes right, is that whether there's 15 cities that say this is a great idea or 15 cities that say it's a bad idea, my hand will go up in the support that this needs to take place. We've already missed out on about $125 million over the past 10 years that could have gone to road projects and things like that. When you look at this, the 0.0025 actually is what it is, amounts to about, I think, 2.5 cents on $10. Mm-hmm. So this is minor. You know, how many times do we walk in and buy a drink at a Maverick or a convenience store, and you know the 44-ounce drink comes to $1.96, and we throw the 4 pennies back into the cup for the next person, and that's pretty well what this is amounting to. But the thing that it does do is countywide is it puts a lot of dollars there over a time period which needs to be spent, and it probably goes right along with the Prop $1 that we all voted for here a couple of years ago. There hasn't been a whole lot of those dollars that have been spent. Those dollars need to be spent also. I'm a believer that these dollars that come in are to be used, and they'll be used in situations that can reinvest back into our communities. Because as we do this, we turn around and hopefully, as we look at things economically, it turns around and grows the economics of the Dane County. And as that economics grows, we turn around and create more dollars than what we were getting already, so we can continue to do this. And I think it's very important for all the communities to be able to have these dollars available. So I don't know if you have any questions for you or Andrew, or maybe you can take some questions when we're through. So
I have a question. I know that some of the use for this money is kind of up to the policymakers once it's been approved. And one thing that I want to make sure of, will any of this be used for transit on the third quarter funds? I know there's specifications in the fourth quarter, but will it be in the third quarter, specifically going to UTA?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and maybe what I can do, the short answer to your question is, it is up to the elected officials in Davis County, making up the Council of Governments, the COG. That group decides how the money is spent. So, in other words, if this so-called third quarter 0.25% was imposed, then the governments in Davis County would decide no money goes to transit, if that's what you wanted. Or if you wanted some of it to go to transit or to trails or all to roads, that would be at the decision of the city officials and the county. Unlike the other local option sales tax, that was the Prop 1 that was done in 2015, that automatically sent some money to transit, 40%. Some money to the cities, and some money to the county. This is different. So it would be completely controlled. And maybe I can just take a moment to explain. If this was imposed, technically it's up to the county. So the county commission has the authority to impose this local option sales tax. And what the county is doing, as Mayor Stevenson and Mayor Galey explained, is consulting with the cities, because it would be the way that the decisions would be made, as I said, about how for the use of this money, it would be a collaborative effort between the county and the cities working through the COG, the Council of Governments, to make that decision. The statutory section that authorizes this local option is actually very clear. It lays out a process. So if the county decides to impose this local option sales tax, then the COG has to develop a process where they develop criteria for how to evaluate potential transportation projects, weighted criteria. There are some that are specified in the statute, and then other criteria that the local governments want to utilize. Then project applications are made to the COG, and the COG goes through a process of scoring those projects. All of that all that information is available to the public, so there's transparency in that process. And then ultimately the COG comes up with a recommended list of projects to fund, transportation projects. So I should be clear that this means that there wouldn't be a guarantee that a project in every city would be funded every year,
Sure.
but there would be a pool of rest. So a community like yours that has a mix of needs to address, providing more capacity for your faster growing areas, and then also make improvements on the roads that you already have, you'd be able to work with your neighboring cities, with the county, with UDOT, with UTA if you wanted to. And then through the COG would make recommendations, and then for funding, ultimately the county would vote on the final project decisions, but basically the county and the cities would be working together through the COG to make those decisions.
Okay, I'm just concerned about that because we're at the end of the line for most UTA things. I mean, we have 3 bus stops and they make one round. Or sure, and we pay a lot of taxes for other parts of UTA improvements that we're not benefiting from at all.
Yeah.
And I don't want our one vote on that COG or whatever to be unheard in this situation as well.
Those concerns that you just spoke,
Yeah,
you're not the only person. that
thank
said
you.
that.
I
So
appreciate that very much.
That's something that.
And that's kind of the problem here. So as you go through, I mean, first I want to address something that was said, is that it was said that we've missed out on millions. And I kind of call that a win because those millions are still in the pocket. Go ahead.
When it comes to sales tax, what you have to remember is that $125 million that I was speaking of over a 10-year period is not necessarily from the pockets of people in Davis County. Hopefully what it ends up being is from pockets in Weaver County, pockets from Morgan County, pockets from Salt Lake County. This is all part of why as we try to bring people into the county. It's great for them to come in, spend their money, and then go home. We love to see them do that because of the fact that it generates those dollars. Every time you go over to Weaver County someplace and you spend $1 on something, you're putting dollars into their fund.
And I understand that, but I spend a majority of my money right here. And I think I've gotten a quarter discount. The other thing, I guess, if I were to even consider supporting this, I would need to know how hard our representative on the COG is going to work to make sure that we get a good representation to get these types of things, these bus stops that we think we need. We need to widen Antelope all the way down to 2000. We want the interconnecting road over to the Layton Parkway, to Layton. All these things I need to know that that you're really going to have to work. You're going to push for these things so that we're not developing all this stuff in Bountiful or somewhere else. I want to make sure that our city, who has been, in my opinion, somewhat neglected in the past because we were at the end of the road, gets that representation that we have been missing out on for quite some time.
Yeah, we need a priority list. That's what I would like.
What's interesting with what you said there, when we were at North Salt Lake Council said, well, how do we have assurances that all these dollars aren't going to be spent up in the north part of the county because of the fact that that's where there's a lot of development going on. And that is part of when it comes to the COG. You got to realize that Mayor Galey has as much voice on that COG as I do.
Galey is a very nice person.
But he has 5 push rods that don't let him rest.
But Mayor, he is a nice guy.
Well,
and I kind of want to make sure that we get the representation I think we may need on there to get our projects completed.
Can I speak to that? Let me
Sure, I would love.
One of the most pleasant surprises for me has been attending COG, because what I'm beginning to see, and it has not always been this way, is a regional approach to what problems are with our roads, particularly in North Davis County. That West Point and Sunset and Layton, that we have, I sit on a number of boards with Bob. By the way, Bob, for those of you who don't know, is commissioner-elect, and will take office in January in the commission. So I think that you tell me I will do exactly what you asked me to do here in that meeting, but I will do it nice.
I just want to make sure we are aggressively going after these projects that are going to make or break our city. If we can't get Antelope widened to the freeway, we are going to have an increase in wrecks. We have a lot of traffic signals need to go up. And all of these are on county and state roads. And we need to make sure we're addressing all these because we're gonna have a lot of wear and tear in
Well, I think
areas
that-
that aren't designed for it.
You know, some of these roads you refer to are actually the
State roads. Agreed.
But one of the things that I can tell you, because this is the thing of this cog, if you come to these meetings, and it's one of the things that I would like to be able to try to do when I move into this new position, is to try to be able to come up with a way of bringing all the councils along with the mayors together in different type of workings so we can understand how we get along. I mean, I can take these two guys right here. I didn't know them from Adam until I happened to serve on a board with both of them, and I've gotten to know them and enjoy them and enjoy listening to their input on things. And this is part of what I believe we have to do with them in this county to make this whole county work. Because the thing that we have to understand is that, and I learned this in Layton, because when I first came in, I was very, very, I'm a competitive person. Okay, I may not be quite as nice as what Mayor Gates is. So I try to be, but maybe not quite as nice. Okay, but one of the things that I looked at was I was so sick of hearing everybody talk about Station Park and the success that Farmington was having with Station Park, and I was going to figure out some way that we could bury those guys, almost like it was a competition with it. But what I started learning was, as I looked at our numbers with what was taking place in our community, is the better they did, the better we did. And we started to understand the fact that in this county, as we create more things for people to want to come to Davis County to spend their money. And that's what we want them to do, is that the more that happens, the better off we all are as far as it goes. And it goes right along with what you're saying on these roads. I mean, we still, and again, this is in jest, so don't anybody take this too personal, but we still, in Layton think, why in the world on West Davis or West Hillfield Road did that not run all the way down and tie into, the main road in Syracuse? Now, some people would say, well, that's so all the people in Syracuse could drive to Layton and shop. Well, that isn't why we wanted it. We wanted to be able so people could go back and forth however they want. It's just not about shopping. It's also about moving traffic, because when you move traffic, you move business. And that's what we need. And that's why the West Davis, and you guys are fortunate with the West Davis coming, because you guys have, I think, 2 interchanges that are in your town. And then there was some talk from UDOT that they were going to basically end it at Antelope Drive. And we as a cog went to bat to push the legislature to come up with more dollars, because that needed to go all the way into West Point. And that helps all of us. And that's kind of the things that, you can say.
I just want to pick up on this and the point about investments, not just in your local roads, but in state roads as well. What some of the other counties that have imposed this third quarter, I'll take Weber County, for example, what they've done with those resources, and here in Davis County would generate around $12 or $13 million a year. Weber County has taken that money and then been able to hold that out as local matching dollars when working with UDOT, saying we have priorities that need to be addressed. And then UDOT is in a position to say we have state dollars that we can bring to bear. And when the locals come up with money, it helps get the whole project funding together. So they've been able to move forward on some things that they would not otherwise have been able to do so. So this money, $12 million, $13 million, in a sense, it's a lot of money, but when you come to infrastructure investments, it's actually not a great deal of money. The most effective thing with this is to pool it with other resources, state and otherwise, to be able to move significant projects forward. Your ability to have as a city and then as a county, ability to have those resources will allow you to leverage state funds that may be available. And I'll also note, this is a somewhat political comment, but Davis County is really well positioned right now in the legislature. There's a lot of needs in Davis County, and there's a lot of influential legislators in Davis County. And one of the things that I would anticipate is that if Davis County says, hey, we have taken advantage of the tools that have been authorized for us by the legislature, and we have the resources available, it puts your legislators in a better position to be able to argue across the entire state, hey, we've got to take care of some of the needs that are in place in Davis County. So I think those are, as you think about this, those would be dynamics I think you might want to factor into this. One more thing I should note, I am not here to advocate for your doing this. Okay, we're a Wasatch Front Regional Council, as Mayor Gailey said, we're a government agency. We do transportation planning. We're made up of cities and counties. We work with UDOT and UTA to help identify what the priorities are and then help move them forward. We work on resource issues a lot because most of the resources are allocated by the legislature, the federal government, or at the local level. So my point in being here today, and this sheet was included in your packet. It's a 2-pager that has information about this. If anybody wants it, I'm happy to give you a hard copy. So I brought them, so I'm just gonna hand them out, okay, for you to look at. Our purpose is not so much to advocate as it is to provide information to you. So if you have questions as you think about this, we're more than happy to answer them. So I just wanted to make sure you were clear on where we're coming from.
I have to say, this would have been nice. I don't know that it's in our packet because I read the bill and that is horrible. Whoever wrote that bill, oh my word.
There's a lot there.
Nobody in this room.
I actually wrote parts of it, but
Wait a minute, I'm over on this side.
You got me to try and get your shoe.
But I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer, so don't hold it against me. But this was, I think.
Time to digest.
Yeah, I know it's tricky, which is why our staff put this together to try to lay out for you what is this, what's the background, how would it be imposed, what are the eligible uses, and what's the process. So, and that's why also we thought, the mayor said, can you come out and talk to our council about this in case there are any questions, because it's really important as you consider things like this. I mean, ultimately it's the county's decision. They're the ones that are authorized to go forward, but they want input from the cities as well. So that's why we wanted to, we're happy to be here.
Let me clarify. Horrible means that it was excessive. I mean, it went on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Will someone take away her shovel?
Do you need another?
Okay, I just tell you, I haven't not yet.
I was going to say, Andrew, could you touch on the issue with this tax revenue of maintenance projects versus enhancement projects?
Sure. So if you look on that sheet, at the bottom of the first page, it lays out the eligible uses of these funds. So this is particularly for this 0.25% so-called third quarter, and what they can be used for. And it allows the funds to be used for new capacity projects. So think a new road or a widening of an existing road, additional transit service if you wanted, congestion mitigation to deal with traffic, preserving corridor as you plan for the future, debt service costs, etc. So there's a whole range of things it can be used for. It cannot be used for basic maintenance projects. So just a road reconstruct or an overlay, unless that maintenance project was being done as part of an enhancement to an existing road. Okay. Now, there is some discussion at this point in a legislative working group in the upcoming session of looking at the eligible uses and potentially making some modifications, potentially creating some flexibility so the funds could be utilized for maintenance. I don't know whether that's going to happen. As you noted, I believe, you noted earlier, the B&C funds, the gas tax funds that you get, which by the way are now indexed to keep better pace with inflation, those typically get used, as you know, for maintenance. And the funds that you get directly, the 40% of that fourth quarter that go directly to the cities and the county money, also can be used for maintenance. Right now, these funds are principally for enhancing your transportation system, improving and expanding the capacity of the system.
Bob, I have a question. I appreciate that you guys are coming to the cities, but from your standpoint, why hasn't the county pulled the trigger on this before?
No, there's a political statement.
Yeah, that's, one of the things I learned as mayor is that we all have a tendency to sometimes be afraid of decisions, sometimes looking at the future, sometimes making the tough calls as far as things go. And that if you want to try to basically impact and make changes, you got to look into the future and see it. I was fortunate, and again, I'm not trying to go into a bunch of family stuff, but my dad actually years ago, when I was a small child, grade school kid, was in Layton City politics. And there was a situation that happened when I was sitting on the council quite a few years ago, that something came up that we made a decision on. And the question was asked, how did this all get started? And someone had minutes from the 50s. And they pulled up where my father was the one who had done this, which I thought was pretty cool, to see this. So when I went home, or I stopped at my dad's home on the way home, I stopped and told him this story. And he said this to me. He said, you all have to remember, as being a city council, local level politicians, is that you are going to make decisions that are realistically going to impact the future more than they are going to just things today. And those become the most important things that you're going to want to do and what you have to look at. And I've never forgot that statement. And so some of these things that I look at are maybe a little bit different as far as it goes. And I think this is some of the things that we've tried to do in Layton over the past number of years, is to try to start taking a look at how can we do things that are going to be wiser for the future and how it's going to impact for the future. And so I'm just going to try to leave that in a very mild sense of saying, you know what, my philosophy is that this is a good thing that is going to help everybody in this county, and that I'm not afraid to make the decision. And the people in the past have been doing.
So don't take this personally.
I don't, Dave, I don't take anything you say personally.
But county commissioners didn't pull the trigger on this because they didn't want to bear the responsibility of this. Basically, what we're looking at is they didn't want to be responsible for adding a tax. But the way I read this one is really at the county's discretion. So we got a new group coming in. Why do we need to endorse this before?
Well, that's what actually I said when I started.
Right, I know that. So why are we? I get why this started the first time.
I believe, and I'm going to ask your city manager this question.
Okay.
Is that I believe North Salt Lake called the meeting with the city managers, and there was a little bit of discussion as far as this goes, on it. And I think this is kind of how some of this is coming. There's been some discussion about, in fact, Salt Lake County, and Andrew can maybe explain this better than I. Salt Lake County, they do this, they turned around and wanted 60% of the cities.
Yeah, and I'll just briefly, you're right. You don't need to do anything on this. It is at the discretion of the county. And my sense of this is that the county thinks that rather than the county just going ahead and doing it, which they believe as individuals is the right thing to do, the way that this if this is imposed and the way the revenues will be decided, how the projects are selected, is going to be something that is really collaborative with the cities. And so the way the spending happens is going to be counties and cities together. And so I think it's a very reasonable thing for the county to say, hey, cities, this impacts you too. You're going to have control over these funds just as much as the county is. So we want to consult with you and see what you think about it. Now, that is not the same thing as saying, you have to take a vote on this. And that's really up to you, whether you wanted to or not, express an opinion on this or not. But just to me, observing this, I actually think it's a great thing that the county is saying to the cities, we want to talk with you, we want to share information and get your input as we make a decision going forward.
So in general, I would prefer that the county come and get city input, but I think this one's decided. So, and from what I know, Bob, the decisions he makes, he owns, and that's great. He's a stand-up guy that way. What I kind of feel like is that by asking all the cities to vote on this, it kind of puts us in a precarious position of.
You're not.
But nobody, but see, this is the thing, from the political side, there has been nobody, I can tell you, Layton City right now, this isn't even a discussion with us.
Right.
We're not doing anything. This goes back down to what will happen at the county. There's been cities who have asked to come in and talk about it. I am in the new role. I'm not looking for 15 sheets of paper that say we supported, or it was 4-1, 3-2, or whatever. That's, I think this discussion is good. If you guys were to say, well, there's no need to vote on this, I'd wholeheartedly agree with you on it.
Well, that's kind of how I feel, but I'm worried that if we don't vote on this, COG would look at us and say, well, we're going to give priority to those cities
absolutely
who supported
not. That
us.
won't even,
that would be harsh. Well, but you see why I would say that.
Yeah, well,
because I'm not in those meetings and I don't know.
I'm just reassuring you right now that that hypothetically, and I'd have to look at the meeting schedule to see if the third week of January, this is on the agenda. I promise you that no one's going to be looking at it going, they didn't, they did, they didn't, they did.
And
And
not
we're holding
every,
this again.
yeah, I completely agree with that. And not every city, some cities are doing what you may do, which is vote to authorize the mayor to send a letter. Some cities are talking about it. About it. And the mayor is sending a letter or not sending a letter or just expressing support. So there's a whole range. The most important thing is that you understand what it is. And then if you decide you wanted to vote to authorize the mayor to send a letter, that is up to you. Technically, as a legal matter, as a statutory matter, that's not required.
No, and I think that one of the reasons why it is important, because there's three things that I believe that the cities have to be involved with. One is the tourism tax that sits there as far as how to best utilize dollars from that. Two is Prop 1 monies to decide how we can best utilize those monies. And the third one will be this one right here. And this is the thing that I think that this should not be a small committee decision. It should not be a county commissioner. The county commissioners may have to, through law, have to stamp whatever the proposals are, because that's what the law requires. But this is my attitude is the cities have to be involved with this stuff. Nobody knows better how to be able to utilize these dollars and to come up with ways and means to be able to do it than involving the cities. And this is something that hasn't been done in the past.
Right.
And that's one of the things.
And I'd just like to say that one of the benefits that we have going forward is the fact that Bob has been involved in municipal government and knows,
Right.
he knows all of the bumps and crannies and the things that go on in municipal government. He's going to be a great voice in that group for us. Yeah.
So one last clarification. If you decide to vote on this letter, I just want to make sure you understand what's assumed in kind of preconditions for support of the letter is on that last page, those 3 bullet points. One of them is there's an assumption that it would generate funds to help cities in Davis County maintain streets. Right now, the statute, as explained, does not allow that, so that would have to be adjusted in the legislature. The second one is that there's a written process so that the allocation of funds is reasonably can be expected to be accessed by all cities in Davis County, which you've talked about. And then the third one is the administration of this tax has to include meaningful input from cities, which I think by statute it kind of does that already. But if it's not met, what the letter says, if one of these 3 aren't met, then your support for the tax may be withdrawn. So that's how it's written right now. It's a draft because we need one to start with. So it can be amended or discarded or whatever.
And I'd have to say that maintenance one is a big deal because, when you have older parts of a city that need to be revitalized or whatever, that you can't just only have funding to certain new roads and, in order to.
So let's ask the
pick
lawyer
that
a
up.
question.
Hmm.
What is my opinion about the maintenance part of it?
You feel strongly that local roads need to be maintained. There's not enough resources available to do that.
We're hoping, and there's some things that, we probably wouldn't go into discussion, but we are in the process and will be even tomorrow morning in the discussion about trying to build that support as far as that goes, because that is part of the things that we as cities understand and see. We have to have something to help us on the maintenance. I asked this question today about, because as he talks about the B&C road funds and that being indexed to the additional dollars. So I asked the question today, how many more dollars has Lake City been getting since they changed the B&C road funds? Less than $200,000.
Not going to go
Shoot, for the homeless. You know how much money it costs us on this homeless thing that they took from us? $150,000. So the way I look at it, between what they took from us and what they're giving to us, we may be somewhere between, $25,000 and $49,000 a head. And that we all know in this room that doesn't fly.
Yeah.
And we have to continue to be able to figure out ways to be able to cover the expenses that we have. Things are not cheap anymore. So
Can I respectfully offer a suggestion? Second and third points are ones where they're covered by the current statute. The process, the engagement of the cities. And you're saying that your support for this is presumes that those parts of the legislation, the law is as it is. The maintenance, because that's not in the current law and there's some uncertainty about that, as Mayor Stevenson said, we're working on that. I think I would respectfully suggest to you that rather than stating it as a sort of as a presumption, you would more affirmatively say, and we urge that the eligibility be expanded to allow for maintenance. In other words, not make, if you're going to express a view on this, not make that view contingent upon a statutory change that is uncertain, but urge that to happen going forward, and that will give a lot more ammunition.
And if I was meeting as a council and mayor with Carrie Ann and with, say, Jerry Stevens, who I think represents you guys' area, I would be making sure that's a very strong point, that these dollars have to be. That is the one thing that we are doing as far as that goes on it, so.
Don't forget, Mr. Wilson, our speaker,
And
represents
yes,
half of
that's
our
right,
city.
That's true, I forgot that part. So
Let's
those
hope
are
he has an
things that
influential voice.
become the key things as far as it goes, so.
As I said, Davis County is well represented in the legislature.
Bob and Andrew, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you for coming.
Sorry we took too much time.
Oh, you're great. You're great.
And I thought you said you were gonna have like those sugar cookies and that.
Well, we've got bread in the break room
Bread?
back here. Yeah,
Bread.
and honey.
Oh, okay.
We're a little different city. We're kind of more on sugar, so.
Thanks,
You just
guys.
say, Mayor and members, if anybody has any technical questions as follow-up to this, I'd be more than happy to talk with any of you.
May I ask a question?
Yes, quickly, if you will.
Yeah, are sidewalks included in road maintenance?
I believe they are. I believe they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, one
Typically
thing,
they are for
Mayor,
maintenance.
just as we walk out, I am hoping to, once I get in this other position, to try to get to know everybody as well as possible and also come to your meetings, not to do anything other than observe and watch and learn. I think that the more I can understand and see what's going on in all the different cities helps us to be able to make better decisions with what we're doing on another level. And also if you guys can give me input, it helps us to be able to do it. So if you see me here and I'm in a pair of Levi's and a sweatshirt with a hood, just realize I'm just here to listen. I'm not.
Welcome anytime.
We
You're welcome
appreciate you.
anytime. We'd love to have people from the county.
I don't
Council,
know
I'm
whether I
gonna,
can deal with you anymore.
Council, I'm gonna call a recess. Let's reconvene in the chambers.
Congrats on your new job.
Oh, thank you.